Thank you, Isaac. As Isaac said, I'm Howard Sherman from the Alliance for Inclusion in the Arts. Our time here today is very limited, so I'm not going to do elaborate introductions. You can go to the website and find more details on our panelists, but we want to get as much conversation as possible. So going from my right, Pat McCorkle, casting director of stage and screen. Listing her credits would take too much time, but basically, if you've ever been to the theater or the movies or watched television, you know her work. Next is Anita Hollander, National Chair of the SAG-AFTRA Performers with Disabilities and a member of the Actors Equity Broadway League Diversity Coalition. Next to her, Lawrence Carter-Long, Public Affairs Specialist for the National Council on Disability, an expert on disability on film. And last but not least, Teal Scherer, actress best known for creating the web series My Kid Be Life. So please welcome them. If you see me look at my phone, I'm not texting or tweeting, my notes are in there. So I want to start by trying to address something that I think is touched on in the film, but not explored as much. So in a way, I want to look at this as Act 3 of the movie, which is the issue of opportunities for artists with disabilities to portray people with disabilities on film and elsewhere in the performing arts. We are almost 70 years now since Harold Russell received 2 Academy Awards for Best Years of Our Lives. And have we made significant progress when we look at all of the other societal progress in that time? So, Lawrence, why don't I start with you?
Well, I think we probably made some progress. I think before we move too far forward, though, it's good to put Harold's career into context. The man got the special Oscar, right? He won the Best Supporting Actor award. Guess how many other movies the man made in his career? Anybody know? 2. Inside Moves in 1980, Dogtown in 1997. Right, so he was discovered. William Wyler saw him in a training film, said, "This guy's great." They rewrote the script for Best Years of Our Lives to change it to match his physicality. It was originally a character who had a traumatic brain injury. The guy shows up, delivers the goods, gets the awards, can't get a damn job. Ended up selling his Oscars to pay for medical bills. Yes. Yeah. So that's what we're up against, if you want to talk about this in terms of history. You know, it's really important. Yeah, you can have the talent. Do you have the opportunities, right? And for the new folks coming through, you know, the question also, I think, as is kind of brought up over and over in the film, almost subtly, is do you have the talent? Like, do you have the skills? And I think those are the really questions that we as a society, need to focus on. Are the opportunities to develop skills out there?
Pat, do you want to talk about the issue of skills?
Well, what I was saying previously was the fact that we really need the talent. I think Gary Marshall addressed it in the picture that we need the talent, and so it means we need the training. So having the disabilities and finding the training is really the question, and it's up to the training institutions, be it the universities or what. I had a student who graduated from Rutgers last year who has 20% hearing. And I didn't know it. I didn't know about her hearing, you know, issue until after she graduated. Until someone told me, well, if her back is to you, you can't address her. And I had never found that as an issue ever. In fact, she was my liaison to the class. So I think the big issue has to be that the training is there and you find the people, and also the getting the writers and the producers to start dealing with it.
Just to talk about training real quick, the places need to be accessible. There's so many, there's several teachers in Los Angeles that are such wonderful teachers that I wanted to train with, but they didn't have accessible classrooms, and it's so frustrating. So I was very limited at where I could choose to study. And
did you ever bring it to their attention?
Oh yeah.
And they didn't change?
No.
Shame on them.
I'd love to address the the word opportunity, because basically that's what I do with SAG-AFTRA and with equity, is that we are looking for the opportunity. And sometimes we don't get to that stage, because I'm celebrating my 50th anniversary since my first equity job this summer. 50 years in equity. It's not like 12 years a slave, but it's similar. But the thing is that my resume is packed full of stuff. Trained at Carnegie Mellon. You know, there's everything there. And yet, when that resume and headshot goes to someone, a few of the times, I get the audition appointment, and then it's canceled. In one particular time, it was canceled the next day because the casting person had been told I had a disability. Nobody said what the disability was, but this person particularly guessed that I must be in a wheelchair or something, and because the character goes up and down stairs on the set, then they had to cancel the audition, but they never asked me. I found out they had canceled. So here's the thing, if you don't know, and your resume has the talent, and it even has special skills, work with wheelchair, crutches, artificial limb, whatever, but the point being that this could have happened without them actually giving me the opportunity to get in the room. Because with my artificial leg, I did a show off Broadway. Within the first 10 minutes, I was up and down the stairs 6 times. But they wouldn't have known that. But from my skills alone, from my experience alone, I was called for that. So I think that opportunity is what we're fighting for, is that we have to get the foot in the door, basically, and that's really an important thing. I also am a strong advocate about training, because we need to get training. I mean, I'm totally in agreement with that. But many of us do have that, and many of us do have experience. But we have to get that foot in the door, and it's a very difficult thing.
Do you think that with the issue of training, is there a concern that people who might be performers self-select out because they fear there isn't the opportunity, and then there aren't people with the training? Is it a vicious circle?
I think it is. I think it's a chicken or an egg question. And I think you also got to ask, if you're a young person with a disability and you're going up through school and you're seeing your guidance counselor, and they're saying, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you never see anybody else with your particular disability on TV or in the movies, you don't think of yourself as somebody who's going to act. You're going to be, oh, I guess I have to be, I'm not going to rely on any careers, but I have to go into something else. I have to go into administration or whatever it might be. And so I wonder how many people out there, because they don't see themselves reflected on screen, and I get this because when we did the project Inclusion in the Arts and I with Turner Classic Movies, the feedback I got was amazing. 87 million people, and there were folks who were writing and saying, it was the first time I'd ever seen myself or something similar to myself on screen. So I think that can't be negated. I think that's something that we need to be mindful of.
I think I hope that we're learning something today in terms of, I don't mean us, I think the whole community learning something in terms of that these things can happen. I mentioned earlier that I had seen, I don't know if any of you saw the episode of Grimm that was on earlier this year, and everybody turns into the whatever monsters of the night. But they did one about mermen and merwomen, and the species on Grimm was called Naiad, which I think was a tribute to Diana Naiad. But the lead mermaid in it was deaf and only communicated through signing, and had there was nothing special about it. I mean, it's just what it was. And it was brilliant, and the girl was spectacular who did it. And it was just the story. They didn't make any point about anybody being anything out of the ordinary. It's just who she was. So I'm hoping that kind of stuff is starting to come in a little bit more. And I also think, honestly, it's up to us as casting directors. It's also us as producers and directors to just go for the talent. I was talking about the wonderful actor named Mark Hamill, who lost one leg in an automobile accident, another one to diabetes, and so he's a double amputee. And I put him in a play of Walk in the Woods. And he was spectacularly brilliant, even though he was in a wheelchair. He just, you know, you saw he was in a wheelchair and then you went on with the play and he was great. So you just, but I had a director and a producer willing to go that way. So you have to hopefully educate your audience.
I do the watchdog scorecard for, we call it the watchdog scorecard at SAG-AFTRA, but, and I keep track of the things that happen that are good, and not just, I'm actually not negative about it, but we look at the positive of what is happening when people, you know, when Peter Dinklage wins the Emmy. This is a real good thing for all of us, because it shows that here's a great actor who really brought something to the role that's authentic and just something more. And he's a fabulous, fabulous actor. So there are moments like this where we go, yeah, okay, we're moving in that direction. And we want to just keep we need to move in that direction, because what we have found a lot of times is that theater isn't coming as fast as television. And I was speaking to a casting director, Fernie Telsey, who said that in TV, there are mandates from the networks. You can get a mandate saying, we need to have this many, which is great. And in theater, that we don't have that as much.
You've also got 600 channels that you have to
and there's that, yes, and there's even new media as well. So
well, I want to ask about that because it comes up in the film, the issue of more people just in general are now creating their own work and have means of distribution that weren't available. Now, Teal, so you've created a
Yeah, I have my online comedy series, My Gimpy Life, and that's one of the reasons I created it, is because I figured if I wasn't getting the opportunity, I would make my own opportunity, and it's been so rewarding to do it. I mean, it's a ton of work, and there's a lot of frustrations that go along with it as well, but it's been one of the best things I've ever done.
it's what I did also in theater.
Yes.
Still Standing is a solo show.
Solo show.
I couldn't get in these musicals, so I made my own, and it's won a couple of awards, and it's worked out.
Do people see these? I mean, doing a show, people have to come somewhere. Putting it online, obviously most people have access. Are you getting people to see them that are decision makers that can then extrapolate from there about how you or other artists with disabilities can be utilized?
Well, it's funny because it won the Audience Award of the United Solo Festival last year, 2012. But it's true that getting theater to be seen by all the right people, it was hard, but it won the Audience Award because it was the best-selling show of the festival since it had began. So there's an audience for it, but it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, it's the same for us. We won a couple International Academy of Television Awards. NPR has talked about us, New York Times has talked about us, and we're getting slowly, I feel like, building the audience and getting buzz out there. But one of our big focuses right now, as we've just released season 2, we have the finale coming out next week, is getting it into decision makers' hands. Like, if I put all this work into the show, I need to make sure the head of HBO sees this. And that's
Because you're a producer, right?
So it's like they need to, and that's the next step, is I've got to do whatever I can to get it into the hands.
And shout out to the ReelAbilities people. They presented Still Standing on this stage a year ago,
Very good.
So I think there has to be a two-tiered approach, in how you do this. I mean, you push the media that's already out there to say, do it better, and highlight the big examples, support the shows that are on. I do, and then also, you don't have to sit around and wait. You don't have to just throw tomatoes and go, well, I just wish NBC would do the right thing. You can say, all right, write it, produce it, direct it, put it up there, and see if it gets an audience. See if it, has that kind of it factor that people are going to jump into. I do worry, though, if you look at what's happened just within the past year. We've seen Ironside, the reboot of Ironside, came out with a big splash, a lot of noise, and we're talking about it. Wheelchair or no wheelchair, the show stunk, and it didn't go anywhere. Even when you've got a show with the star power and the name recognition of the Michael J. Fox show, which I stuck with it, I think, for maybe 3 or 4 episodes. Yeah. The first episode was fantastic. The best bits in it were all about the disability, and then when it tried to turn itself into the Cosby Show, it was kind of fake. And so I think we really got to push to say, yeah, we don't want to, we have to hire the best talent, of course, but we also have to make sure that the writers and the producers and the directors, particularly the writers, I think, are doing scripts that are edgy, that are interesting, that are different. There's only so many times You can play the Rocky music and show the disabled person as an inspiration. One, because being inspiring all the time is exhausting. You can't do it 24/7. You need a nap every now and then. And the other thing is audiences have seen it over and over and over again. I know when we did this film series, it was a counter-programming. Every month we did it, and the idea was that we couldn't do anything that was sappy, safe, or sentimental. And when I talked about it to the Hollywood Reporter, I said it was no handkerchief necessary, no heroism required. And the Hollywood Reporter guy said to me, what do you show then? And that was before ReelAbilities, right? And it was a 6-month experiment that lasted 4 years. Why did it last 4 years? It lasted 4 years because people like Carr wouldn't let me stop.
That's right.
Right? You know, there were people, we started out with 15 people, then it was 20 people, then it was 50 people, then it was 75 people, then we had to move because we couldn't get enough people in the door. We were coming first Wednesday of every month. And I think if you have quality programming, and you're willing to push the envelope, and make sure you have the quality control, is it good? You know, my litmus test was, do I wish I'd made this myself? Then you put it out there, audiences will show up, but you've got to be committed to that.
Pat, can you speak to the issue of opening people's eyes to consider performers with disabilities that they might not otherwise, because as Bill Macy said, it wasn't on the page.
I tried it, personally, when I approach a script like a director. I try to think like a director, I find out what the director's needs are and try to envision it. And I don't try to be limited or by any of that. I mean, if I see an actor that I think is great, and they can come in, I don't worry about whether they can climb the steps. We can deal with that later. There might be some Broadway actor has bad knees and he can't climb the steps. It's not going to stop me from bringing him in either. It's just the best person. So what I just do, it's just bring the best actors I can. And then they see it. Sometimes if you tell them ahead of time, they might go, oh, there's a limitation here. I don't tell them ahead of time, I just do it. And if I think the person really good, if I can talk them through the part. Speaking of Peter Dinklage, he just turned me down for a play yesterday because he's got 2 movies coming up. So he doesn't have time for us.
Anita, you raised the interesting point about even the idea that there are quotas or mandates.
There are mandates.
And what's interesting, to use an example not of disability, but people have cited the Fast and Furious film series as being hugely successful because of the wide array of ethnic groups that appear in that film, as well as actors from different countries. And so that they've strategically utilized people of varying experiences because of the economic power. Right. Is there a perception yet of the economic power of the disability community?
I don't think so. I don't think they have made it, but it should be.
Well, when we do the numbers, which Lawrence knows pretty good about, 54 million Americans.
Yeah, the low estimates are 54, the high estimates are 62, 58, let's say.
The buying power for advertisers, it's significant.
It's $220 billion.
$220 billion, my colleague from Inclusion in the Arts.
Inclusion in the Arts.
That's with a B. That's with a B. $billion. And I think you also got to know that if what people have to understand is you don't have to be the person with the disability to have disability affect you.
Yeah.
To use an analogy, if you're going out to dinner and your grandma is a wheelchair user and you can't get in the door, you didn't just tick off grandma, you ticked off the cousins, the nephews, the father, the brother, and they're all like, well, I'm not going to go to this restaurant anymore because grandma can't get in. And so, I think the same is true with the media that we consume. If they get a depiction wrong, if whatever. Now with the internet, you're right. You can, I've done it myself. I tweeted something to a reporter at the New York Times, and within a half an hour, the guy turned it around. They used the word invalid. And I said, have you checked your own style guide? Because your own style guide says don't use invalid. Bam! They turned it right around. Because all the people that see my stuff, called him out on it. So you can do that now, in a way we couldn't do before.
Everyone can do that. One letter represents 20,000 people or something. I mean, everyone is able to, with the internet, get on there and say, this is how I feel about what that series was or what that. At theater, we still have a problem. But you can still write a letter to the producer of a Broadway show or something that you see and say, you know, it would be nice if we didn't always feel we had to be represented by someone else. You know, you will never hear somebody say that that main character in 12 Years a Slave was well represented by the British actor Jeremy Irons.
Yeah.
You're never going to hear that. But, and that's I know, I'm speaking to the choir. I think most people here understand that we don't feel we need to be represented by other people, but we're also talking about what Pat was talking about, where she creatively comes up with the idea that this guy is talented, he could play that judge, he can play that, whatever that character is, because he's a great actor, and it doesn't matter to her about the disability. Well, this is really important, because there aren't every role, there isn't a disabled role in everything, but there is a role that might be right for who you are as an actor.
I mean, in all fairness, in terms of my casting, I try to flip it all around, not just with actors with disability, but with women playing men's roles and racially mixing it up and just trying to, whoever's right and whoever makes the story work. But I think you have to have the writing. The writing has to be there, and you have to have a vision on it.
Yeah, because I think if you do a show and it fails, the bean counters at the networks, whatever it's going to be, the multimedia conglomerates that own the studios and the TVs, networks, and et cetera, are going to go, yeah, we tried the disabled show last year and it didn't work.
Right. Well,
Exactly right.
yeah, no, that's, they can look to an iron side. I want to open this up to questions. I just want to say one thing. The comment was made about we're preaching to the choir here. However, it's one thing to come to a festival of works that exist, and the struggles that, there are certainly struggles behind many of these films. They're smaller, they're independent projects, but it's also a question of that the people in power do need to hear from the choir. Not just to complain when it's wrong, also to praise when it's right,
Absolutely.
and also to say, please think about this. Because if they only hear complaints, then they're being reactive and defensive.
And let me tell you, my job is public affairs, which is in the real world we call communications director, or whatever it would be. But in DC, it's public affairs. Interesting phraseology. I find that I'm diligently, anybody who sees what I do on Facebook or Twitter will know that I'm immediately jumping on anything that happens just about at any given time. And I can tell you, as somebody who builds relationship with media on a daily basis, that they, as much as we might be apt to complain, people are apt to say thank you less. So they remember the thank yous more than the complaints. So if they happen to do something right, either by sheer miracle or actually putting the energy into it, make sure it's more than worth your time to send that email or go to the Facebook page or send a tweet saying, holy guacamole, Batman, somebody got it right, isn't that great to see? Because that never, ever happens.
We have very little time. We can take a couple of questions. I ask that they be brief, to the point, and not statements, but questions for the panel. Does anybody have questions? We can keep talking, but this is your moment. Okay, the mic is coming to you.
With respect to the access issue, it's just so disturbing to me that that's happened to you in your acting career. We'll go to Broadway and be lucky enough to be offered an opportunity to go backstage, and then all of a sudden, Kinky Boots realized they couldn't let us go out backstage because it wasn't accessible. So I can't imagine what it's like from the other end, being in the industry and trying to do it if even the audience, the paying audience, doesn't have access. Can you speak at all to what the community is doing about that to make things more accessible? We know about ADA, but what about the old construction, right?
Well, I can mention there was just a settlement of a lawsuit that was brought against Nederlander theaters to make, this is again for public access, but that they will be implementing, I think it was in the neighborhood of 150 specific changes in their 9 theaters to make them more accessible. It's unfortunate that it was a lawsuit. It follows on the heels of a similar action with the Schubert organization now some 10 years ago, but the public process is being made. I think backstage is a great challenge because for those who have been backstage at Broadway theaters, there's not a lot of space, and the retrofitting would be considerable. I'm not saying it excuses it, I'm saying it's an issue that's going to continue to have to be forced.
But I think in terms of the buildings, in terms of classes, in terms of access to casting and whatever, it's up to the casting directors to do it. I know when we moved into the space we're in, we have a door that makes, that the wheelchairs can get in it. And when we were moving into our floor, I said to the building, where is the handicapped bathroom? And they said, we don't have one. I said, well, then we have to have one. It's right next to my office. Because the very first clients in our new space was the Guthrie, and the assistant director was in a wheelchair. And it was the very first people who ever used our office. So you just have to sort of demand it, or find the space that will demand it. I mean, that's why I'm sort of shocked that some of these schools don't have it. I understand what it costs, but you just find another space, that's all.
And that was, yeah.
And because honestly, it's to their benefit to have you as a student. I mean, I don't get it, you know.
Your money spends just as well as anyone else's.
That's right.
Do we have a couple of other questions? If not, we'll keep talking to each other for a couple more minutes, but
As you're
I don't want
saying.
anybody unsatisfied.
I
Yes.
just have a comment. As far as I'm concerned, the people like the pity parties. You know, that the disabled person might call them pity parties, and they just think they're so courageous and they're so wonderful. When they see people out there, activists, that's how they think we're all nuts. You know? But, and another thing, with the same vein, these commentators that are making correspondents on TV, that are making millions and millions of dollars, do not know the language. They still say wheelchair bound, what's the other one? Invalid, victim, handicap. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, it's
And these are what? But here's the thing. They know other minorities the correct language. So how come they don't know it for
well,
us?
that's what Lawrence was speaking to.
Yeah, and I also, you know, if you, anybody ever, not to plug my own Facebook page, but if you go there, oh, what the hell, I'll plug it anyway.
Why not your web address?
Yeah, is I've been doing something called an LCL style guide as a result of what happened with the New York Times. And just random things that sort of occur to me when I see somebody do something that seems very archaic and out of touch. I will throw something out there just to provoke discussion and thinking, hopefully provoke a little bit of thinking, which is a dangerous thing, and not often encouraged, but I enjoy it, and I think others should too. And one of the ones I sent out the other day, which was, the whole effort to end use of the R word as a slur, as derogatory. I didn't want disabled folks to sound like we were always angry and we would only protest and we would, that's the only thing, we would just say no, no, no. So I said, wait a minute. If anybody knows your history, knows the etymology of the word, you can know that the word retard is a perfectly fine word to use. If you want your salad to last a little bit longer, if you're slowing down the beats in music, if you're wearing asbestos underwear and you don't want to burn your behind, you can retard fire. It's a decent word to use in a certain context. But I also said, if you use it as a slur, as you use it to belittle or demean, then we're going to call you on it, and you better expect that we're going to call you on it. So you can say, yeah, a word is fine, but be cautious and careful and mindful of how you use it. And I think that's what we as activists need to do, is be smart, be funny, catch them in a way that they don't understand it, and surprise them, and you can move it forward.
I call the TV station. That's what I do.
And another thing, the inclusion in the arts, we did a panel at the Writers Guild with news writers and sports writers. One of them, the sports writer, Christine was with me, and I believe, yes, and Lawrence was there too. The sports writer went right out with the glossary, with which Christina and the inclusion in the arts came up with, and actually did a story on that, the language, on the radio show, 10 minutes. It was a step in the right direction, but of course there were only 6 or 7 writers at the event, but those that were there were
But
effective.
you come and you say, it's 2014, if you use the word handicap, you better be talking about bowling, golf, or horse racing. That's the end of it, you know? You don't use it any other time. And I think what you gotta do is shock them a little bit and give them alternatives. You know, don't tell them you can't use your favorite word, just use it in a way that's not gonna piss us off. And then they'll get that.
We do have another question.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, as an attorney, I'm not sure that we'll ever be able to, remediate barriers everywhere, but I see tremendous opportunity with this media. You can't deny the clicks that people make when they watch things like Teal Show and Chantarito and See Way and, the many others that are out there working kind of doing their own thing. And I think that's, you just can't ignore those numbers.
That is true, and LA agents actually look at those numbers.
Yes.
I know someone, one of our PWDs, I'll say it, Kurt Yeager, is doing very well because he gets so many followers. And so
And the man's
you are
pushing
absolutely
it. The
right.
man's punching it, pushing it, rolling it all the time. You know, that's what you gotta do.
For the first time, we can quantify popularity in an interesting way.
Immediately.
As a quick aside, and my colleagues at Inclusion don't even know this yet, this list of terminology, proper terminology, we have the top 10 do's and don'ts in terms of language. It's the most visited page on our website. It is? Yeah, it is. I told you, the staff didn't know that. Since Isaac is subtly inching towards me, I assume that means we're out of time.
You read my cues correctly. I want to thank you all so much for being here.